the seasons, He who did make the hush of night, He who made the sun. Praise Him who gave us laughter, praise Him who taught our hearts to love. Praise Him and thank Him, everyone. Seek Him in His light above. Praise Him who gave us laughter. Praise Him who taught our hearts to love. Praise Him and thank Him, everyone. Seek Him in His light above. Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone.
Follow your dream, though it leads to worlds unknown. Life's but a shadow, once our dreams have flown. What if men cry, your dream is not our own? Your soul knows the answer. Go on alone. Give life your heart. Bless everything that's grown. Fear not the loving. All this world's your own. Make rich the soul. But once the seed is sown, seek freedom, don't linger. Go on alone. Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone. Go on alone. Go on alone.
I'd like to start with the reading for this week's topic, The Mystery of Avatara, or Divine Incarnation, from Rays of the One Light. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter states, as we saw last week, O Bharata, whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, I incarnate on earth. Taking visible form, I come to destroy evil and re-establish virtue. What is the mystery of this divine manifestation? Great avatars such as Krishna and Jesus Christ are born as babies, even as we all are. They take human form and go through normal human experiences as they grow from childhood to adulthood. They eat, they play. They may seem to suffer sickness and disappointment, like the rest of us? In what way are they different from other human beings? The important thing to understand is that even as they are like us, so are we also like them. Their realization can be ours too. They come on earth to show us our own divine potential. The difference lies not in the manner of their manifestation on earth, but in the consciousness with which they are born. All things are condensations, so to speak, of the cosmic vibration Om, described by St. John's Gospel as the Word. Most human beings, however, are unconscious of their divine origin. The avatars, on the other hand, come consciously as manifestations of that divine reality. As the Gospel says in the first chapter, "And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. I recently learned an interesting fact about butterflies. And many of you might know, but I thought of sharing because it's symbolic. So we all know that butterflies are not born in the shape of butterflies. They go through the shape of caterpillar, and then they become chrysalis with little cocoon inside the cocoon, and then finally comes out as a butterfly. So this certain family with kids, they found 2 chrysalis, and they got excited. They wanted to see how the butterflies come out. So they waited, and finally one day they saw a little hole, in one of the chrysalis. So they were watching. Wow! Then they could see through that little hole, this soon-to-be butterfly is trying to squeeze itself out, but it took a long time. They were watching for a long time, and finally it came out, went out to the branch and opened its wings. Then they noticed that second chrysalis started wiggling. Whoa, this is also coming out. But then this family was watching for a long time for the first one to struggle. So they said, why don't we help this one? So they took a knife, cut the top of the chrysalis, the cocoon, so that this one can come out quickly. It did come out, but its wings never opened, and it soon died. It turned out that this in the process of squeezing itself through that little hole, the certain liquid or fluid comes out from the wings and the body of the butterfly, and that fluid helps the butterfly to open the wings once it comes out. And this is so true for us too. We go through, when we go through, or when struggles or tests come, we say, can this just be removed? I don't want to go through. But it is through those struggles or tests that we put out our effort, our energy, and we grow spiritually. masters or avatars, they don't make it easy for us because they know that it's not, because they know that it won't help us, help our growth. They patiently and lovingly wait for us to go through. We may not hear their voice, but they're cheering for us. Also, it's good to remember that avatars were not avatars from the beginning. They went through the same struggles, maybe many, many, many incarnations ago, but they learned the same hard lessons like we are going through right now, and that's why, and they never gave up, and that's why they are who they are right now. A disciple once asked Paramhansa Yogananda, "Should I pray to you, Master, or to the Divine Mother?" Have you ever heard that question? Master answered, "To the Divine Mother." He didn't mean that don't pray to the Guru, because he himself did pray to his Guru Yukteswarji or Param Gurus, Lahiriji, Babaji, and even other saints. What he meant was the disciple should see the Guru as a manifestation of the infinite light, not as a person separate from that infinite light. He's telling us to worship an avatar not as an outward form with the name, with the certain body, the certain voice, but he's telling us to worship an avatar for his consciousness that is one with God. Swami Kriyananda said, "Bring the avatar out of the pages of history and out of the specific form." And he even said, "Bring him into ourselves, into our own personal consciousness." Avatar means, you probably know that it means the descent, the act of descent, the descent of divine into fleshly form. And Swamiji continues with this avatar or the descent. He explains, the divine descent into human form will not be complete where you yourself are concerned until he can descend into your own body and mind. The divine descent into human form will not be complete where you yourself are concerned until he can descend into your body and mind. When we talk about avatar, when we think of avatar, we think in the context of this big, big cosmic plan, cosmic drama, but they are also here for each of us. And I want to close with how Swamiji guide us to bring that avatar into our own consciousness. You can close your eyes if you like. Think of him in meditation as the human being he is or was. concentrate on that one special avatar among many for whom your heart feels a particular affinity. If you have a guru, you may think of him. Visualize that spirit descending through your medulla, brain, and spine, and out into your nervous system, filling your entire body. Feel that he has, in some mysterious but exalted sense, become you. And feel divine devotion toward him, especially in your heart. You are that divine consciousness which now dwells in your body. Pray that it fill you and purify you of every human imperfection. Uplift the attunement you feel in your heart and offer it up to God. Pray that the avatar make you one with itself, with the infinite spirit.
Good morning, great souls. No one is saying good morning. We don't believe that we are great souls. Maybe that's the problem. But really, that's how Swami Kriyananda would address devotees. He would walk into a room and he would say, "Good morning, great souls." And people would be looking behind them. Who is he talking to? But he was talking to them. And we have to believe that if we have to bridge this great chasm that we have in front of us from here to, infinite consciousness, we have to start believing these things. I've been watching a TV series, maybe you've seen it. It's on the life of Christ, and it's called The Chosen. And, it's one of the most beautiful depictions I have seen of the life of Jesus Christ. And partly because, they have just given a very nice balance, because he was an avatar, he was a great, great being. But then he also had a human side, and often people, anyone, we can ignore one or the other, right? But here in this reading, Swami was saying avatars, they are like us. They eat, they play, and they do that often. So we take hope that, oh, yeah, I can relate to him. And so in this series, and I've been just watching it for several weeks now, it's really, just shifted something inside of me in my own relationship with Christ. Of course, he's one of our gurus, but really just watching him, powerful as he was, but then also he had a great sense of humor. He was very light. He would joke with the disciples. He would poke fun at them. And then seeing the disciples, we hear Saint Thomas and Saint Matthew and Saint this and that, all of Christ's disciples. Yes, which is true. But, just seeing the disciples in this series just made it so nice for me, because I could see, they weren't saints then when this process was unfolding. And to see, my goodness, they were making some mistakes and some blunders and had some serious doubts and confusions. It gives you hope that, okay, there is light at the end of the tunnel, because we all are headed in that direction. And one line which Chika read in this reading, Krishna says, when virtue declines and vice predominates, I incarnate myself on earth, and taking visible form, I come to destroy evil and to re-establish virtue. It's very interesting that the birth of Christ, Jesus Christ, was predicted, it was prophesied. But the Jews, his disciples, his people, they started believing that when he would come, when the Messiah would come, he would actually be a military leader. Many of them believed that. And in part because, they were under the oppression of the Romans, and the Romans were just doing terrible things. So many of the Jews started hoping and believing that he would come and, destroy evil and reestablish virtue in an outward sense. Well, and I'm also narrating from this series. Christ comes and, he starts gathering his disciples, he's doing miracles, and everything is fine. But, and, in one of the scenes, one of his disciples is like, he saw his master produce things out of thin air, turning water into wine. And they are just getting excited. They're like, this is it, and then they come to Jesus and say, Master, that's it. Let's do it. Let's just burn these Romans down to the ground. You have all the powers. We are with you. We'll support you. And it's funny. But Christ said, I'm not here for that. And then they're like, what? But that was what was prophesied. And he said, no, not outwardly. And in essence, he was saying, I'm not here to take away all the things that make your life unpleasant outwardly, terrible as they are, the oppression and all of that. I'm here to take you out of it altogether, right? And it reminded me something of what Swami Kriyananda said, and I'm going to read it. It's a short something he said about Ananda, which is where we all are right now. But think about this and meditate on these lines, if you will. Swami said, Ananda itself is merely a thing. Ananda itself is merely a thing. Don't be attached to it. I'm glad Dayakeshwar are not here. They would throw me out of the ashram. But don't be attached to it. Don't imagine that we'll ever create another Garden of Eden here. Okay? Ananda can never achieve perfection. For outer perfection is a delusion forever unattainable. Right? And he finally ends by saying, be attached only to doing God's will. I'll repeat this last part. Ananda can never achieve perfection. Don't imagine that we'll ever create another Garden of Eden here. For outer perfection is a delusion forever unattainable. Be attached only to doing God's will. And why am I sharing this? And partly because, Swamiji would often say, when he would talk to disciples, students, he would say many a times we fall in this trap. Even while we are on the path, it's almost like our mind plays tricks on us. We say, okay, I found the avatar, 5 of them in this case. Wonderful. I've come to the right ashram, Ananda, it's wonderful. I have all these nice people now around me, supporting me, that's excellent. I have clear sailing. And Swami said, not at all. It just doesn't work like that because it's still outward. It can help you, but here the word to be emphasized is can, but it's no guarantee that that is what is going to take us to God. That is what is going to take us to the divine. And that is why Swami said, be attached. This is going to come, this is going to go. Nothing stays. But in your heart, like Yoganandaji said, each one of you stand alone before God. And he said, you have to individually make love to God. You have to individually, it's ultimately you and I and thou. And we have to remember that. And no matter what life circumstance we all find ourselves in, we all are in different situations. Some are married, some are single, some have children, some have responsibilities, work, whatever it might be. But this we have to practice, not being attached to anything except God's will. And how do we do this? Every day, when we meditate or when we do our prayers or our puja, take a little time, take 5 minutes, and just in your mind's eye, put everything aside. Everything, what is that everything? What you think you are. I am a husband, I am a wife, I am a whatever. What you're supposed to be, what people expect of you, put that aside. All these self-definitions, all the things that the world tells you or you yourself tell you are your important priorities, your responsibilities. Put that also aside. And with that clean slate, you become a renunciate at heart, isn't it? And you're free because you have freed yourself mentally. You're free to do God's will. And in that moment, pray. Say, now, God, what would you like me to do? I'm here, I'm ready, I'm here to do your will. And I granted, it takes courage to do this. It's not a very easy thing. But the more we practice, that alone is going to bring us freedom. Not the things outwardly. It reminded me, Swamiji, very interesting. These are serious things for us to think about. When Swami Kriyananda was in his guru's ashram in America, he said there was a lady nun there, a long-time disciple, and she once confided to Swami, and she said, living here in this nice place, everything is nice. She said it's easier to meditate in this ashram. It's beautiful. It's easier to have good thoughts. But she said, I have to remind myself to keep putting out the effort, spiritual effort. She said, I have to, because it's so nice outwardly. She said, I sometimes lose the incentive to go further. And I forget I have to keep meditating longer and deeper and make all these efforts. So just to say that whatever we do outwardly is good. God is happy if we do, like Christ said, He's happy when people do good works. But ultimately, it's just, what do you want me to do? Because God has a song He wants to sing through all of us individually. And we don't want to be in the position, where we have spent our life on the spiritual path, doing good things. Everything is good. Service is good. Meditation is good. Everything is good. But we never ask that question, but God, Divine Mother, what do you want me to do for you? Because that is really how our own liberation is going to come. Not just by just doing generally what is recommended. I am also remembering from this series a very, very touching scene. And this is again the human part of Christ, of an avatar, which we all also need. And, maybe you've heard of this disciple, Mary of Magdalene. She was a very close disciple of Christ. But before coming to Christ, she was leading perhaps an immoral life. And unfortunately, she was afflicted by evil spirits, and demons would, in fact, take control of her body. And so when Christ met her, the first thing He just places His hands on her, blesses her, and at least that affliction is just gone from her forever. And then, she starts following Him, and serving His work and just traveling with Him. But at one point of time, they show that some fears come up in her while she is still with Jesus and with the other disciples. And she decides, when no one is looking, she just leaves in the middle and she goes back to her earlier life, just for a few days, but to her worldly friends, to some of the things that she used to do. And some of the other disciples, because, she was like a sister disciple, they go after her and they kind of convince her to come back. But in this scene, which is so touching, Jesus is in his tent. He's already feeling bad because he's had bad news from somewhere else. And his head is bowed down when Mary comes into the tent and Jesus' mother brings her because she's not feeling the courage to come and face him. And he just says, it's not you. He says, a lot is going on around right now, so it's not you. But Mary is just inconsolable because she's feeling so much guilt. She's feeling so bad. And she tells him, that I owe you everything in my life. You healed me and I just threw it away. And I didn't even come back of my own. They had to get me. And she's just crying and weeping and, just feeling very, very down. And she just keeps telling him, I just can't do it. And, he looks at her and he says, do what? And she says, I just can't live up to it. The things that you have shared, and I feel so sorry to let you down. And he said, all I want is your heart. And he said, all the Father wants is your heart. And then he says, did you really think that once I healed you, you would never sin or struggle again? which was a nice, I'm glad he said that, because we put the bar so high for ourselves. And he said, no, I don't expect that. And he said, all I want is your heart, and the rest will follow. And it was just so beautiful to hear those words that he knows, the master knows. Yogananda ji once told something similar to a monk. He said, I don't ask you to overcome delusion. He said, all I ask you is resist it. There's a lot of difference. We don't have the power to do it, but he's saying, all I ask you, just resist it. And so, doing God's will and just our heart, the heart, if we can open it more and more to God, and every day, and Paramhansa Yogananda ji, when he was a child, he would cry for Divine Mother. Maybe you've heard that, maybe you haven't. But as a young boy, days would go by and he wouldn't be able to think of anything else, and he would cry for the Divine Mother. Well, I think he didn't need to do that, but I think there is a lesson there, and it's really for us. That it's not that he needed it, but we need to follow in that footstep. Because until we have that deep, deep hunger, that deep longing, until really, I've come to realize nowadays, until you and I reach the point where we are saying, not from our mind, but from our heart, Divine Mother, Guru, I cannot live without you. I cannot breathe without you. This day cannot happen if I don't have you. Until we are able to say that, God is not going to come. Because he knows that maybe, we want other things. And I have also found or started to find that when we just burn the ether with that kind of longing from the heart, then what begins to happen after a while, that no matter what you do in your outer life, people like you, they don't like you, they praise you, they, say nasty things, it just doesn't matter. And what begins to happen, not because of an effort of will, because when we do japa, we are recommended, do japa, take God's name, keep him. But a stage comes when you go beyond japa, and it's like your heart is just going in one direction. You have a pause and it goes back to the Divine Mother. Not mentally, I mean now. It's a longing of the heart which says, I cannot exist if you are not here. So that's where we want to be, and that's what we want to cultivate. And I tell you, you begin to even touch it, that longing, that feeling, and nothing comes near that feeling. And it's supremely satisfying. And really, that's all what God is asking us for. He's not saying, drop this, don't do that. He's just saying, like Christ was saying, all I want is your heart. Give me your heart. Joy to you.